Hey guys, so this is a record and a band that I wanted to cover for a long time, but I didn't know when the right time to do it would be. But now that we seem to be spiraling downward societally, it seems to be a good enough time to talk about a record that is trying to paint a portrait of all different kinds of Armageddon scenarios. So this particular record had a huge influence on me in terms of how I write riffs, how I write records, and I'm going to try to do a little bit of a showcase on bands that have that influence on me. But before I get into it, I want to talk a little bit about my relationship with this particular band. When I was in high school, I used to go to Nightfall Records in Chicago every chance I could, whenever I had a little bit of spending money. And if you are all too young to know what the record store atmosphere was like and what it was like to discover new bands, discover new records, it was awesome. And now that everything is available with the click of a mouse, it is you're never gonna recreate that feeling. But Nightfall Records, I wish I could find a picture of it. I can't find a picture of it online, but the storefront had a really crudely painted Nightfall Records logo where the letters would start small and get big. There was no stencil used. It was just they were out with their heart and they just went ahead and did it, and they wanted to make a metal record store, and it was only metal. So it was awesome. I had just started getting into more underground stuff and starting to understand there's a world beyond, like, your Circuit City, your Best Buy, all that shit. And having there be a metal-specific store, it was very exciting to go in, and he had a little boom box behind the counter where you could take any record you wanted to hear. If you didn't want to take the gamble on some cool-looking cover art, he would just pop it in the CD player, give you a listen, and if you liked it, you could take it home. And, man, those were the days. But I bought this band's first record after hearing it in the store, Third Eye Function, the Theory and Practice's Third Eye Function. And it was good for what it was, and I took it home based on the opening single that I heard in the store, Submissive, which is probably the most, I don't want to say catchy, it's a technical, at that time, probably technical thrash band. It was probably the most similar to the first Meshuggah record, Contradictions Collapse, I would say, in terms of influence. And this is the record they really kind of fell into their own, and I don't really care a whole lot for anything that followed since. Colonizing the Sun is a pretty good record. They really streamlined what they were doing for that while still maintaining kind of technical riffs. But as far as a grandiose artistic statement within the technical death metal umbrella, this one, the Armageddon Theories, I think really just covers all the bases. And at this time, bands like Cryptopsy were trying to push the envelope with technical death metal. I know a lot of people aren't going to be fans of Whisper Supremacy and Forward, and a lot of bands were kind of following suit within the same umbrella of trying to expand death metal where it could without it falling into, like, I don't know, grindcore or anything within the core umbrella, because the further you push the parameters, the less you use that musical language of death metal. And this still falls pretty well within those parameters, although it's definitely got a much stronger kind of sci-fi leaning. The guitars can be a little self-indulgent at times. This is a record where the full vision of the scope of the record as a concept album is realized really well. By the time you're finished with it, you feel like you sat through a real movement as opposed to a collection of songs. This really, it stays with you after you're done. Not saying it's a perfect record. The first transition from the opening passage is more of just kind of welcoming you to the atmosphere of what the record is going to be. It's got a lot of lead guitar theatrics behind it. It's pretty superfluous, but it sets a stage for a barrage to come. But there is a severe lack of transition between the first actual riff of the song and that intro, and that duality between really consonant melodic passages and a really disjunct kind of riff styling is going to be the dichotomy that happens throughout a lot of this record. So as much as I want to say that it feels amateurish the way it's kind of stapled together, because I always hone in on that, it seems very deliberate, because a lot of this record is trying to put together that clash between human desires rooted in good intentions and the terrible path that always takes you on, which is a lot of what we're seeing now in modern society. And the entire theme of the record seems to be revolving around like an extinction loop, where people create a religion to kind of control the masses, and it ends up leading them down a terrible path, and they self-destruct, and the survivors discover remnants of that religion again, and it just keeps happening, and each time it's more severe. And the last track on the record takes the perspective of a kind of antichrist political figure, and instead of it being more rooted in the victim's perspective, like a lot of the first half of the record is, you get to see the perspective of the person that is doing the apocalypse scenario and placing that upon the people. And it's unique because the music does follow suit with that. You do see a lot of really climactic resolves happening that you don't get in a lot of death metal and a lot of metal in general. For every fault that this album has with having tangential passages, there is still going to be an overarching melody, and some of the ways that the riffs will come back after a tangential part are really kind of amazing. Like it's a genius show of hand in some of these passages. There is a 4-song passage within the record. Even though the whole thing is a concept record, there's a mini concept within it, and the way all of that ties in together, the way the emotions of the listener are manipulated throughout, it's really amazing. And ever since hearing this record and hearing this band, I thought about my own particular writing as having greater scope than collections of songs, greater scope than my limitations in terms of the emotions I feel. I wanted to reach for something bigger than myself. And I, since then, essentially only write concept records. I come in with an idea where I have a strict set of emotions that I want to elaborate on, and I make sure that it mirrors the story that I'm trying to tell. Whether or not there's lyrics involved, if I'm doing an instrumental thing, I want to make sure that the concepts are being fleshed out musically. And that you can do that. A lot of people don't understand how you can do that. But once you start understanding the recipe that certain note clusters can provide in terms of emotional manipulation, you'll start getting there, and you'll realize the tools you have that go beyond the skill of, oh, maybe I can play faster or sweep better or any of that. You're going to start to understand that the relationship between notes is really where the mastery comes in. It's not about how fast you are or whatever. And that's something that this band understands, and they didn't really capture it as well in any future release, and I wouldn't expect them to after this one. The emotional manipulation is so strong that they manage to depict the scenario so well in a way where, yes, it's the end of the world. Yes, that happens in almost every other metal record, but it finds a way to make you feel as though you are both a passenger to what is about to happen and at the same time directly responsible for the carnage that's unfolding. You know, it's not easy to do that. It's not easy to take a palette of emotions, a palette of notes, and create emotions with that and drive it forward and flesh out a theme. But this record really does. And, you know, I understand a lot of you metal purists out there are going to hate the superfluous nature of a lot of the guitar theatrics, and they are there. Sometimes there will be guitar solos, which are, you know, pretty ridiculous, but it's more a sardonic aspect. It's more them pointing the finger at humanity and saying that you are the cause for this, and all of these embellishments that we're doing, this is the nature of the destruction that can cause. So everything has a purpose. Granted, like I said, there are some passages where the transitions need work. That happens. But the entirety, the flow of the entirety of the record, it really is an incredible feat to behold. And I always come back to it, and the more I listen to it, the older I get, I do point out more of its flaws as a more seasoned listener with a more analytical mind. But when I was a kid, when I heard this in 1999, I bought it at the Milwaukee Metal Fest, and I had heard Third Eye Function, and I had predictions that they would take off and become a more fleshed out artist with this record, and I was not let down. But at the time, I was so focused on cool riffs. And I still love cool riffs. I like, now that everyone can put their shit out there, like, I need something to catch my ear, and you're not going to catch a full arrangement. You don't have time for that. So you need cool riffs to draw you in. And this is definitely built on cool riffs, but that is more the selling point to get you into a fully realized structure with a concept album that is completely realized. And it's really a great record. It really is. For all of its shortcomings, it still has an overarching statement and a lasting impression that not a whole lot of bands that try this kind of thing really can pull off. And to me, this is the end of the technical death metal movement. I mean, there were some good records like Anada's Conductor's Departure in 2006, but this is really the high bar, and no one talks about it. It's unfortunate. It's a pretty grandiose artistic statement. No one gives a fuck, but that's what happens to be geniuses, to be misunderstood, right? So, but yeah, if you got 40 minutes, I definitely suggest giving it a listen. I'm not going to say that it's going to be easy to draw you in. It's going to take a lot of listens to find out what's going on. If you don't find yourself getting invested in it, that's totally cool. And if the embellishments of the guitar theatrics take you out of the experience, I understand that. But if you make it through to the end, I'd be pretty impressed if you didn't feel that there was a resounding statement there. So that's my recommendation for the day. Definitely check it out.